Hey guys, thanks for being here. It's our latest video. Uh, Doing a lot of video this week because we did a live stream that went almost 5 hours on the night of the election. And if you want to know what it took out of Jen and I to do that, we've basically done very little since. So we have a few articles that we will be going through and getting up on at the line, online at the line in coming days. Jen, it's funny, like in the last couple of days since the election, you and I have actually been doing our work elsewhere because you wrote a piece in Maclean's that I've seen making the rounds, and I've been doing something I do for TVO in Ontario where I'm interviewing on background people from every major campaign, and I'm basically just saying to them, so like, what's up? Like, what happened on Monday? Before we get into that, though, tell us what you wrote for Maclean's, and we can pop some links up on the line and just point to people to that. But what was your argument this week after the election?
Yeah, I mean, the argument that I made was that conservatives need to get a grip and get behind O'Toole for at least another election. This follows on stuff that I've been writing for the Maclean's previously about just sort of like the damaging nature of constantly shivving your leaders after every election, and how that assures you a couple of problems. One is it assures you a perpetual campaign style environment. It assures you that a team is never going to be able to fully come together and coalesce behind a leader. And it also assures you that the kinds of leaders that you're going to get are going to be substantively different if you're not willing to commit to them over time. You either are going to have people who are coming into politics from the celebrity side and therefore don't need to build name recognition, or you're going to start cementing dynastic politics. So one of the big advantages that Trudeau had when he became leader of the Liberal Party was that, you know, he had all of this brand appeal just attached to the nostalgia of his name, essentially. So unless you want political leaders that are increasingly pulled from family dynasties or from celebrity, you have to sort of accept that when you take on a new leader, that is not just a one election, 12-month fuck around. Like, you have to essentially commit to that leader and commit to spending time to building up his capacity and building up his ability to lead.
You know, years ago, I was interviewing in a different context, a cop, a retired cop, but someone who'd been a very, very, very senior officer at a major police force in Canada. And he was kind of lamenting the state of modern policing. And I think probably there was a danger there of him having rose-colored glasses on, thinking about the past. But he said something that was really interesting, talking about challenges of policing. And he had said, we pay them too much. And I sort of went, huh, like, what do you mean by that? Like the police associations, their minds would be blown if you said that. He goes, yeah, but the problem is we've turned policing into something where for a lot of people, it's their best prospect for like a decent wage, which is wrong. He says it's supposed to be a calling. He says we need to find the right mixture between paying people well enough that they're not corrupt, but paying them so much that people who aren't really interested in the law or law enforcement are like, well, I'll make more money doing that than I would doing this. I think with politics, we have our incentives off, right? Like what kind of people are we going to be recruiting to be not only party leaders, but politicians? And I think about that cop a lot, right? Because he had this interesting insight of if you pay them too little, they're susceptible to bribes. Like look at the early history of policing, right? These guys were on the take because the job paid almost nothing, right? So they had to have side gigs going on. You know, being a Canadian politician, we're very cheap as Canadians, and I hear all the time, "Oh, we're paying that politician too much." It's like, yeah, but you don't want to create an environment where there are people out there who are like, well, I'm charismatic, I have gift of gab, so I'm going to go run for office and make a ton of money. But you also don't want to have a situation set up, especially as you said, where if the job is just going to be kind of just ruthlessly cycling people in and out because, you know, sometimes bad luck, we need to strike the balance of drawing in good people and leaving them there long enough to succeed, but then also hopefully moving them out before they get stale.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Like, I mean, I struggle with this. I mean, I wasn't one of the big people who thought that the Conservatives should have knifed Andrew Scheer as soon as they did. But I also didn't go to bat for him because I was like, you know, I can see the argument that essentially he had fatal problems that you couldn't fix over time. Okay, fine. None of the problems that I saw in the last campaign, firstly, nobody did well in the last campaign. As far as I'm concerned, the entire last election was a mulligan for everyone. Like it was just the mulligan election is kind of how I'm reading it. And the other thing is the problems that O'Toole did have and the mistakes he made were not fatal problems. They were things that can be addressed and worked on and fixed, and policies can be tweaked. And I do think that they know they need to go into this a little bit smarter, and their strategies need to be readjusted. Like there's stuff that needs to be changed, no question, but there's stuff that can be changed. And meanwhile, the next election that gets run in this country, which we're all presuming now is going to be on an 18 to 24 month time frame, which means bluntly, you don't have time to change leaders right now. Like you don't have another year to sink into another civil war and another brand building exercise. Like you just don't. So the next campaign you got to run, you have to be very prepared to run it. And also, like I have a hard time imagining that Justin Trudeau is going to be able to pick up a lot of popularity or build on where he is right now. I think he's maxed out, and the long-term projection for him is stable to downward. So I think that if you're a conservative, you're kind of foolish to try and throw another roll of the dice on someone else who may be worse.
Andrew Scheer was an interesting character, right? Because he got purged not because he didn't win, not because he came up short. I think he got purged because he had apparently, questionable academic, professional credentials, a surprise American citizenship.
Yeah.
I don't remember the details, so I don't want to convict the guy in a video. I don't remember what happened. Something with spending with like party funds or something like for private school for his kids. I don't remember the details of that, but that came up. Plus the fact that he had never shown growth as a politician, because I've joked about this before, but like you'd have Andrew Scheer at an event somewhere and then you'd go, gay, and he'd go, like he would visibly tense up, right? And O'Toole, I think, unlike Scheer, has growth potential left. The question is whether or not he has the chance, and I honestly don't know. You had mentioned this, so we should mention to the readers here, we really have no idea what we're putting in this dispatch.
No, usually we try to at least skeleton out these videos before we start, but I'm so out of juice right now. I have one idea that I can throw on the table, but I do think we should say something about the election, if nothing else than it's the mulligan election. Everybody seems to be out for the leader's head, and I actually think as a result of the fact that everybody is sort of unhappy with the outcome, everyone should just take that as a win, call it a mulligan, and move on.
I was saying to someone earlier that I could do a high school debate club for every side of every one of these leaders. Like, if you want me to explain why Aaron O'Toole deserves another chance or why he should go, I can do that. Sure. I could very easily. I could do the same for Trudeau. I actually think in a weird way, Jagmeet Singh probably has the best survival case. He's the only one of these guys that actually grew the popular vote, even just a little bit, and flipped the seat. So he is a case. I have no idea what goes into picking a block leader, so I don't even care. Like, you do, you man, whatever. Yeah. The Greens need to be fired into a supernova and never spoken again. And if you're the PPC, you're obviously delighted right now with Maxime Bernier because he actually brought out a win for you. You had said that maybe one of the things we write about is everybody needs to resign and or stay on dispatch, which is just to acknowledge the fact that
essentially it's the mulligan. Like, just call the selection a mulligan and move on. Like, nobody had it quite right.
The other thing I would say about the election is I think my initial read on it was wrong. So we did our live stream on Monday, which was fun, and thank you to the thousands of people who hung out with us. We're a little bit surprised, but we are very flattered. I woke up the next morning having slept 3 hours, and then I looked at some of the returns, and my instinct was, oh, that was pointless. Not exactly that it was a mulligan, as you're saying, but nothing changed, nothing to see here, status quo election. The more I've looked at it, the more I've actually noticed that, in particular in Ontario, the Conservatives did better than I thought. They didn't flip seats, right? And I know that that's coming out of a hockey game being well, we only lost by a goal. Well, guess what? You're losers. Go hit the showers. But the Conservatives have to go hit the showers because they lost. But in the last election, the Liberals beat them by 8.4% in Ontario. It's still in flux a little bit right now because of those mail-in ballots, but this time it's only about 4%. So, if you move, it was a conservative who told me this. So this is disclosure. It was a conservative who told me this, but he says, if we could find a way to move 1% out of the Liberal column and put it into ours. So it's a 2-point win for us because we go up and they come down. He says he needs to see what the final numbers say, but that would have moved, his guess was between 20 and 30 seats over to the Conservatives right away, and half of those in Ontario.
How many seats are within 2,000 votes? That's actually the question, right?
I don't know yet. I don't think that is known yet, but we'll know in a week or so.
Well, and I think that actually was a perfect little dispatch blurb. It's just like, actually, the Conservatives did better in Ontario than you're giving them credit for. The other thing, the problem here is I think this is a party that's expecting to replicate the lightning in the bottle that was Justin Trudeau in 2015. They're expecting there to be some kind of magic bullet solution that's just going to punt them back into power. And I don't think that this is a party that's come to terms with the fact that, no, a lot of the electorate distrusts you, and you just going to have to spend time rebuilding trust. It's just going to be shitty, boring drudge work for you. You don't have a star candidate in the wings. It's just going to be slow and steady improvement of policy goals, slow and steady identifying voters, slow and steady getting your GOTV game in order, building your coffer. Like, it's just going to be steady incremental progress for this party. And I think that is an expectations management issue that O'Toole's going to have to deal with.
Well, it's funny, but I think we saw that spilling out into full view of the free world on Monday before the ballots were cast, when Conservative insiders were telling the Star, "Oh, if we hold him to a minority, that's a win." I mean, I think the O'Toole people knew that and started the expectations management early.
But that's the kind of spin that has the advantage of being true.
Yep.
Right. I mean, that's, if you thought that the Conservatives were going to form government here, that was not a realistic. You did not go into this election with a realistic expectation. This was essentially the trial run for what I think could be a very strong election. Now, if O'Toole can't make gains after another election, yeah, I mean, I think that would indicate that the party's got to change course. But I think they would be very foolish to call him the towel on this guy at this point in time.
We've already mentioned to the viewers here that we normally spend maybe 5 minutes sketching these things out first, and this time we just didn't bother. So we just basically clicked record. So here we are thinking in real time. Is it worth mentioning Gerald Butts getting creamed on Twitter for saying something that I think was somewhat cynical, but absolutely true? And I'm not even sure that cynical is the right word for it. Like, what he said was that the reason the Liberals were able to win so many seats with a depressed voter turnout and a declining share of the popular vote is because that they're really, really good at getting maximum efficiency out of their seats. And I cynical was the word that got batted around. And I said as much, and he told me that he doesn't think it's cynical to play by the rules. And you know what? I think he's right. I just can't think of a better word to kind of describe.
There isn't a better word than cynical. Like, nobody's arguing that he's not playing by the rules. No one's arguing that the Liberals did anything wrong. Like, that's not the argument. The argument is that you're engaged, the Liberals are caught in this loop where they're engaged in the petty pursuit of power for the sake of pursuit of power. That's the fundamental problem. There's nothing wrong with playing the game to win. All right. There's nothing wrong with any of these parties playing the game to win within the boundaries of the rules. Okay. But where this gets icky and cynical is when you're no longer playing the game to win in order to advance some kind of unifying vision or goal or pursuit that you're trying to gain out. And I think that you once said that the Conservatives were philosophically spent, sort of halfway through Harper's term. I think the Liberals are there now. They're philosophically spent. They're out of actual ideas. And $10 a day daycare. Fuck you, $10 day. $10 day daycare is not going to pan out into universally accessible, high quality daycare for everyone who wants it in any reasonable amount of time. And I think deluding yourself to think otherwise, given our fiscal situation and given this party's track record. $10 a day daycare is a good sounding buzzword that's trying to bring over again 1,000 votes in the 905, particularly from suburban sort of moms, right? Who haven't had time to look at the fine print of what's actually being promised there. So that's, I think, the problem with the Liberals. And that's why I don't think they have a path to a majority under the current leadership. It's because people look at them and they're just like, this isn't a unified party that is seeking party for any reason anymore. They're just they exist to gain power out of habit. And I do think that's a shift. Back in 2015, I remember Justin Trudeau touring Alberta, even in places where he really realistically had no shot of winning, and saying things like no country in the world would keep the oil sands in the ground, and like, I'm not here to fuck you over. Like, he made overtures here in this province, and like, they bought a pipeline out of a desire for national stewardship. Like, even in Alberta, the place where like the province most skeptical of him because of his last name, the province that had every reason to hate him the most, he made an effort. And that's gone now. That's gone now in the pursuit of what Jerry Butts calls voter efficiency. And like, that's a problem. I think it's a problem. Now, it's not wrong, but it is cynical.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, you are right. I have said before that around 2013, when Stephen Harper had his majority, the party exhausted its agreed upon agenda. Like, there had been the Progressive Conservatives, there'd been the Alliance, they'd merged. There was a set of things everybody agreed on. Everyone felt strongly about it. And by kind of around 2013, maybe early 2014, they were done. And the difference, though, between them then and the Liberals now is that the Liberals don't have any new ideas, but they also haven't executed the ones they have. And this is actually to their advantage. Like their climate targets, childcare, Indigenous reconciliation, some of the stuff they're doing there. These are longer term projects. Like for the Conservatives, it was kill the gun registry, poof, dead. Mm-hmm. And then they were like, well, now what? Like, and they had nothing to move to. And that is when I began having weird conversations with Conservatives. And some of them were like, well, we should really give some thought about the fundamental role of the government in the Canadian body politic. And others were like, and don't we have too many immigrants? Like, that was when you started to see the Conservatives going weird. And then that's probably why they ended up kind of being in some of the trouble they were in. Like, once the moderating, unifying issues were gone, we figured out which ones were generally reasonable people and which ones were kind of nutters in disguise. So the Liberals probably have some momentum left, some inertia, but then they're going to start getting into trouble. The other thing I would say about what Jerry had said was that what he is describing is really, really great news for the Liberals and really, really bad news for the overwhelming majority of people who are voting against the Liberals and still finding themselves governed by Liberals. What is good for the Liberal Party will eventually become bad for Canada if it hasn't already. Mm-hmm. But as other people have pointed out in response to that comment, it eventually becomes bad for the Liberals because so I think I've mentioned I've written these pieces for TVO this week. And when I'm looking at these numbers, and again, we're not done with them yet, what you actually see is how so-called Liberal voter efficiency is a 2% popularity swing away from Liberal catastrophic annihilation. Yeah. Because if they're eking out like 150 some odd ridings and like the margins they're winning them all are getting narrower and narrower and narrower, we're one hot mic gaffe away from Trudeau saying something dumb and we all wake up and it's like 230 Conservative seats in this country. So I
think John McGrath made this point is like there was a real fine line between the Liberals bragging about their voter efficiency in 2004 and then all of a sudden like losing the plot, like third place party in 2008, and that seems to be the cycle that they're repeating right here.
Well, if you're only in power because you've won 80 seats by 1% of the vote, that means you were 1% of the way from losing 80 seats, and it can happen really quickly, and it could also happen. And I'm like, it wouldn't break my heart or anything, but it can also happen for a dumb reason. It doesn't have to be like, battle-tested leaders with a grand campaign of ideas. Like, it could be like Liberal candidate walks naked past Zoom camera that's on, or Conservative peas and bug. Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, if your entire pan-Canadian electoral strategy is vulnerable to a 1 or 2% swing, the country is vulnerable to a lurching change in government because of that. All right, so we've got some ideas now.
I really think it's worthwhile to get into the Jerry Butts stuff and like to acknowledge, yes, he's completely correct, but this strategy is ultimately kind of bad for Canada, and it's really going to lead to a huge glaring vulnerability for the Liberal Party itself. And I would also point out that this strategy has led them now to 2 minorities in a row with no path to a majority in sight.
Yep, no, that makes sense. So now basically we have 3 election ideas. One, mulligan election, two, conservatives did better than Ontario than we thought, and people should pay attention to this. Three, talking about Jerry, you had mentioned something else.
Yeah, I could. So John Doyle did this piece about how don't demonize Rosie Barton.
This came up also this week with Maxime Bernier having received some requests for comment from reporters, tweeting out their names, their email addresses, and basically saying to his followers, tell them what you really think, which is kind of like just vague enough probably to avoid being illegal, but also
he was coaxing a harassment campaign.
Absolutely, but doing it in a vague way that he hopes will shield him. Well, we all knew what that was, right?
Well, and also I read the actual request for comment that came from the media, and if you've written or read a bunch of these things, you'll know that the reporters in question acted totally professionally. They framed their requests appropriately. Like there was no indication that the reporters there were doing anything inappropriate. So yeah, it's an issue. So it's like, I don't know, maybe the way to go about this is to focus on the Maxime Bernier stuff rather than the Rosie Barton stuff, or maybe there's a way to deal with it on both sides. Just basically be like, no, don't demonize journalists. Never. Oh, there was another thing. There was the Medicine Hat. A bunch of people in the Medicine Hat got the Medicine Hat News to apologize because the Medicine Hat
reported the news.
Reported the news. So like maybe there's a way to frame all of these things, like don't demonize journalists, and like just don't. Like, we don't really want to be combatants in your culture war issues, and don't perceive just someone who happens to disagree with you on an issue as being your mortal enemy. Like we don't see ourselves that way. We like, even you and I, Matt, you and I are commentators, we're columnists. We don't see ourselves as players in a culture war. We just don't see our role as that. We just are coming to the field with like a perspective when we're throwing it out there, and what you do with it is your business.
Is it worth, I mean, I don't disagree with any of that, but is it worth noting that when it comes to Barton in particular, and you've touched on this already, women have a rougher ride. And there's a kind of a terrible reflex among male journalists to kind of do, but my best friends are Jewish. Like it never ends up going well, but they'll say, well, we also get hateful emails. I have had I think you know this, I've actually had one incident with an individual who was not mentally well, having clearly and explicitly threatened to kill me and my family and my colleagues. And he was getting into outright stalker-ish. Like he was photographing my place of work. He was telling me where he was going to hide with the rifle and kill me as I got out to walk to my car. And this guy did get like law enforcement. He's dead now, which is, I can't really claim to be sad about that, but this guy actually did have a history of violence. Like he had been convicted of violent crimes, of attacking reporters. I don't think he was an evil guy. I think he was a mentally ill guy. So I have had a genuine, valid, real threat to my life and my family. And I would still say women I work with get it worse than I do. I used to host a radio show with Supriya Dwivedi, who is a Toronto-based commentator, generally aligned with liberals. And she and I would be talking about the same topic, and I'd get an email. I'd be like, Gurney, fuck you, you suck. Like, okay. And then Supriya would get an email. It's like, Supriya, we are going to find you, we are going to gang rape you, and we're going to slit your throat and drag you behind our pickup truck. And it was the same conversation. And sometimes it was the same people. They were content to tell me to go fuck myself. They had to threaten her with gang rape and murder. So I think we should acknowledge, if we're going to get into this, we should acknowledge that there is a difference here.
There's a difference. And I mean, death threats, gang rapes, anything of that sort of thing. Like never do that. How about just never, ever? It's like, don't burn books, like don't threaten journalists. How about you just never do that? That's never appropriate. It doesn't matter how angry you are. I mean, I've had a couple death threats or whatever, and I've usually tried to turn them into column fodder. But the other thing that's really weird is that when you're a public figure, you do tend to like attract crazy people. Like this is a thing that happens. Like people, it's like they see you on TV and you become an avatar for whatever issue is going on in their head or whatever problem they think exists in the world. You become and like, I don't know, there's a bit of it's not just crazy people who do this, is what I would say, is that like, you became, especially female journalists become like this avatar. I can't succeed as a writer. I can't succeed in my life. I'm struggling because of X policies or Y ideology. And you are an avatar for all of the reasons why I am suffering and struggling. And look at you, you successful bitch on TV.
Well,
That is what it is.
that's almost becoming a subgenre of journalism itself. Like the
It
people
is,
who've
yeah.
never quite made it being mad at those who have. The other thing I would say, though, that on the other side of this, something I've experienced quite a lot is the person who's not violent, but believes that we are in a relationship. And I don't mean like a romantic or a sexual one, but sort of like they read my stuff and then they start communicating with me on very intimate terms or very personal terms. And you have to be very kind in these situations because most of these people I suspect are lonely. Like I don't think it's much more than that. But there have been times when I have had to kind of say, I want you to know I'm incredibly grateful that you enjoy my radio show or that you read my columns, and thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. But I'm not going to discuss this personal matter with you. Like, we do not have a personal relationship, and I believe you are more invested in this dialogue than I am, which is sort of an awkward thing. And some of the time the people go, oh, okay, sure, okay, understood. And you know what? One of the advantages you and I have, we're writers. People don't normally know what we look like.
People don't know
You
what we
know,
look like.
people know what words look like. I was
Yeah.
at a shopping mall once with my kids, and some women came up to me and they're like, "Are you Matt Gurney?" I was like, "Yeah." And they're like, "We love your National Post columns." And my mom, who I saw my mom later that day, and I mentioned that to her. She's like, "Oh, that must have been so nice for you and so validating." I was like, "No,
No,
it
it's
made me
creepy.
really
It's
uncomfortable."
really creepy.
Like,
It's like no, it's most of the people, all of those people. I've never had that experience where the people didn't mean well. Like they came up and like, oh, I see you on CBC, and I just
yeah,
love you on CBC. It's so nice. It is really really nice. But it's also like, dude, I've got like a fucking grilled cheese sandwich in my mouth here. Like I'm
yeah.
really, I don't have makeup on. Like I just came back from the dentist. Like, and I have to now act like I'm something I'm not because like I can't be an asshole to you. You're being really nice to me. Like I've got an obligation to perform in public in a way that I never did before. And it's very puzzling and it's very odd and it's a weird experience to go through. But
My wife's a school teacher, and when she runs into students like at a restaurant or at a shop, it's kind of the same. Oh, like yeah, hi. Like in the class, I have authority. I'm overseeing. Here I'm in my sweatpants buying like printer toner at Staples. Like it's like it. Yeah, no, I know what you mean.
It's a weird thing. Anyway, this so what the conversation here is just like straight up like, yes, it's time to acknowledge that like, journalists are getting increasing amounts of incredibly crazy abuse in proportion to the fact that there is an increasing amount of crazy in society that is being directed our way.
Yep.
Women are getting it worse. Here are three examples, like, Doyle's column very rightly pointed out, don't demonize Rosie Barton. That's, even if you disagree with her, that's insane. Don't the medicine hat thing, and then the Maxime Bernier thing. It's just really three examples where it's just like, it is weird that we exist in this weird place in the public sphere where, the more crazy there is in the society, the more crazy we're going to get. And like, we're almost like this weird weather vane or a weird barometer for social crazy.
Maybe the one thing I would add, though, like if you see a journalist, often a woman, but not necessarily, saying, hey, here's a rape threat I received, or here's someone threatening to shoot me in my house, or here's someone threatening to burn down the building, my assumption is that they have probably taken 20 others like that before to their boss, their director, to HR, and have gotten no response. Like, I think we've all been in workplace situations sometimes when we make the realization we should probably start blind CCing our personal email and stuff. Oh, yeah. I should keep a record of everything I'm talking about with my manager right now.
Yeah.
Tweeting out the images like this puts on the record, this was my workplace.
Yeah.
And I think companies, look, none of the big media companies, none of the big social media companies in this country have the ability to go, all right, well, we've thought about it and we will make the death threats go away. Like, it was wrong. We shouldn't have ignored this. There are very real limits to the power that they have, but I do think there's been a suck it up, buttercup, that you're in the big leagues and this is just part of it. And every time I see one of these things tweeted out, I'm like, oh, okay, someone's not getting any help from HR.
Someone's not getting any help from HR. I mean, and you know, you need to have policies in place to help people actually deal with this stuff emotionally and psychologically, because, you know, even the toughest of us, it will chip away and it will freak you out. And then I think that the other thing that you need is, you know, some of these companies just need to start hiring people to filter through social media and email for this stuff.
Yep.
Like, you know, there just needs to be someone there to start going through this kind of stuff, who's got training to deal with it, and able to identify credible threats from just people spouting off, you know. Like, it's I don't know, like, I don't know if there's a way around it. And then the other thing that needs to happen is, honestly, like, we need to just kill comment sections. We cannot continue to give platforms to this shit.
I mean, it would hurt our business at the line because we use Twitter for a purpose. One of the things we should do is kill social media. And I know we're not going to. Like, this is, if I had a magic wand, Facebook is gone.
Yeah.
Like, until and unless we get meaningful identity verification so that the people sending the rape threats can be identified, because that is a crime. Like, you and I are discussing it as something that is uncouth, right? Oh, you shouldn't do that. Let's not lose sight of the fact that the people who send these emails are committing a crime, until and unless we have some way to actually link these accounts to the actual identity that does not require like 7 court orders and an IT expert. We're not going to make any headway on this. And I was reading a couple of months ago in a different context that right now, all of the algorithms, all of the human resources, all of the law enforcement resources are not able to keep up with a fraction of the high priority bad stuff on the internet. I mean, child sex abuse materials, extremist propaganda, actual like criminal activities happening in real time, like identity theft and fraud and things like that. The volume of this stuff has completely overwhelmed the ability of law enforcement or moderators to deal with it. And as much as this sucks, all the stuff you and I are talking about is about 900 items down the priority list for what will be dealt with. So I say, shut the fucking stuff down. Okay, so we have 3 on the election. We have all the
something about media
toxicity, stuff like that. Is there anything else? Is it worth? I mean, Alberta, like your home province, having a little bit of a week. Is there anything worth mentioning there? I had texted you a couple days ago with just what the question is: should Kenny resign?
And I said yes, just like in 3 or 4 weeks. Yeah, like you firstly, for the sake of his own party, he wants to try and if he wants to try and salvage what's left of the reputation of his party, if that's possible, what he will do is he will take personal responsibility for the failures, eat it all, and throw himself under the bus. That is the appropriate move for him right now. But he can't do that while the hospitals are still filling up. Like, you just have to wait that out.
I mean, Doug Ford, I think, should have put his head on a platter. Sorry, again, metaphorically, after the 3rd wave debacle, but he didn't. And okay, like, I mean, I live in the real world, not the world I want to live in, and we don't live in a you know, I don't know who keeps tweeting this. Is it David Moskrop, who just has this great series of tweets, which is, I'm asking what it would take for a Canadian politician to resign. And I don't know. I don't know.
I mean, it takes a caucus rule. That's what it takes. Anyway, like I said, I think Kenny's done. It's just a question of like the best strategic moment to kick him out, to salvage the party and try and, you know, resolve what's happened. And I also think that, bluntly, even if you were to kick Kenny out and replace him with someone who's a little bit more moderate right now, I don't actually think it would change the outcome of the pandemic at this point. I think it's way too late for that. You know, even if you were to implement like a 2-week hard lockdown in Alberta, which we may very well need to do, you're going to buy yourself an extra 2 weeks. Like, I think at this point it's so far gone, and the virus is so out of control and compliance is so low. I'm just not sure that there's anything that can reasonably be done as of today. 3 weeks ago, yes. Today, it's what it is.
The one thing that
So
might save you in a weird way is that there aren't that many of you. Like,
yeah,
there's 4.5 million Albertans. Your ICUs are cracking with 200 some odd COVID patients. Ontario surged and held together with about 900. So if you send us 100, it would hurt, but we could absorb them and it would save you. So like there might be a surprisingly quick ending to this. The problem is going to be, do you keep generating 100 new
that's the
ICU
question. Yeah.
patients every day, right?
And our so this is also something that we're keeping an eye on, because in the next 2 weeks we're going to have an answer to this question. It looks like the increase in case growth has stalled. Like it does sort of thing, like our daily case growth does appear to be stalled, but what hasn't happened yet is exponential decay. We're not down off the other side of the thing. So if we continue at this, like kind of like this current plateau right now where we're at, we're still fucked.
You're fucked. You're differently fucked, but you're fucked.
We're just definitely fucked. I mean, it means that we're not going to get, 1,000 cases in a day, but it does mean we'll get like 10, 20 cases every day for the next 3 months. Like, and then we're still fucked. So, yeah, I want to hold off talking about what's happening in Alberta in terms of the COVID file for at least another 2 weeks, because I want to see how things are going to roll out. It could very well be that we're out of the woods. We don't know that yet. We're just watching it. If you want me to write something about Kenny, it's just hold this space, essentially. Like he will be cut out. It's just a question of when right now. And like strategically, it didn't really make a lot of sense to fire him today. It will make more sense to fire him in 3 weeks. He is going to be subject to some kind of leadership review, probably in the spring. I don't think he's going to be able to recover enough by then to be able to do anything. I just don't see a path back to victory for him here.
You know what? Maybe worth mentioning almost in 3 paragraphs that. The other thing, let's wrap this thing up because we've been gabbing a while. I will also see if Andrew Potter wants to write one.
He's just emailed us actually. He's asking us if we want. He's right on our page. You guys want to dispatch item tomorrow? I thought about writing out Butts's tweets, so there you go.
There you go.
And vote efficiency. Quebec is putting out new gun regulations tomorrow. That might be interesting, but might not. I think that we should assign him the thing on vote efficiency, see what he comes up with.
Quebec guns is kind of interesting, though.
But it may not be interesting.
I don't know. I'll think about that.
Oh, look, the sparkle in your eye when you mentioned Quebec guns.
Well, it's 2 things. First of all, it's guns, and it's also Quebec, because Quebec is the most interesting province in this country that we don't talk enough about, because you have to know Quebec really well to make any sense of it. And that's actually something you and I have identified. We want to recruit more Quebecers to write for us. Andrew does live in Quebec. I don't know. Let's think about that. Like we kind of hashed out a pretty good plan for what we would maybe want to say about Butt. So maybe we put him on the thing that wasn't on our radar. In any case, let's end the video because this thing's gone on long enough.